Hi guys, so welcome back to another episode of the Disgustingly Resilient podcast. This time we do have three of us, but unfortunately Dave couldn't make this one. He had some real world issues. He had to sort some family stuff out this evening. But we are joined by the General, Mr. Jannis himself, is joining me and Aidan for, I suppose, a bit of a this is your life, General Jannis, I guess. You know, going to sort of find more about the man behind the videos, the man behind the channels, and just sort of, you know, have a bit of a round table discussion about Death Guard, where they sit in the meta, just the usual stuff really. But before we introduce Mr. Jannis himself, Aid, is anything you want to add to the intro before we fire into things?
No, I'm happy to get into this again. If you like the content, leave a like, leave a subscribe, and I'm sure you'll tell him yourself, but you can go check out this other channel. I'm sure we'll get into it, but that's a pretty good one as well. And you should probably go and like and subscribe that one as well.
So bringing then Mr. Jannis, or the General, I think we have to call him, into this. So before we started discussing Resilient podcast, we weren't the only people sort of doing Death Guard content. General Jannis, his YouTube channel kind of preceded us, and it was focused, it is still focused very much on the stats, you know, kind of breaking things down into mathhammer, deep diving things a lot deeper than we go. So we felt it was only right to get him on and, you know, pick his brains. And I suppose, Jannis, you know, introduce yourself, you know, what got you into 40k? How long have you been playing? You know, when did you discover Death Guard?
Yeah. All right. So yeah, it's very nice to be here in the channel back after my break, and So I started 40k before COVID hit in 2020 when it started, and people were laid off at work, and I was at home. And I don't know, I kind of always knew the Warhammer universe, but not the figure gaming aspect of it. I knew it from computer games. I had some friends in lower grade school that they were collecting Space Marines. I remember the Ultramarines or the Crimson Fists, and they were like this old, maybe second edition or something like that. So I always knew about the Space Marines. I had read a little bit about Warhammer Fantasy World, Orcs and Empire and Sigmar, and you have it. And then at some point, I was into more board games. After computer gaming, I was more into board games, and then a lot of the board games, you know, they have a lot of cards. And it was a lot of things, and then it's like I need a game with a lot of dice, you know, like some dice. Yeah, I need to throw some dice. And then I saw the Warhammer. I checked some YouTubes, I don't know, and I was looking at the Warhammer 40k, where you 20 attacks, you throw 20 dice, and I was like, all right, that could be something, right? And I just ordered it was the end of 8th edition back then, and I ordered the smallest box, the First Strike.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I started. So the First Strike, and it had these introduction missions. We were in lockdown with the kids. I was thinking, okay, maybe we'll paint the models, maybe do something, you know, something like that. And then I at that point I didn't know Death Guard, right? So it was like First Strike. I knew the Space Marines. I have to use those. But then the kids, when we painted the Poxwalkers and the Intercessors, you know, the kids didn't want to have the Poxwalkers, right? So on the Plague Marines, they were like, Dad, you take those. And I'm like, okay, I'll take those. And then suddenly I realized, you know, that the Space Marines are boring, and the Death Guard, they have a lot of character, right? So then I was hooked. I was really hooked into Death Guard, and then I got the Dark Imperium set and so on, and started my collection. And then basically it was lockdown, so I have never played a game of 40k because you couldn't meet someone and play. So I was just collecting. We couldn't do anything. So it was like, okay, how do you actually play the game after that? But so that's how I started with Death Guard, and then you know, okay, then you come into the lore, who's Mortarion, and you read this stuff, right? So I don't know if that covers a bit the story. So I haven't been playing for a very long time, but it was like, okay, Death Guard. I was really sucked into Death Guard somehow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Some would say infected.
I was in the pandemic. I mean, come on, in the pandemic.
It's poetic. I think a lot of people actually started getting into the hobby around like COVID and lockdown and whatnot, because we definitely saw like a resurgence. So for you to get started then, it's probably a good time, because a lot of people getting started, a lot of new players coming into it, and especially as you said, with us being in the launch edition box and the first strike box, I think we actually had quite a resurgence of like Death Guard players as well getting into it. So a good time for you to jump into Death Guard.
And when I started, when I was young, I was building model plastic planes. You know, the kits, right? But I enjoyed, exactly. The Spitfire or something like that. But I was happy to assemble stuff, but the painting, I was like, who cares? I mean, I just want to assemble the stuff, right? And I was really worried with these small figures that can I actually paint them? You know, it's like how I'm not a painter, right? But then suddenly it's like, okay, I can actually pick out the worm here on the Plague Marine, and it was really fun to paint the Plague Marines actually.
Okay.
So painting was like a surprise, and it was quite nice also sometimes after work, you know, like, okay, I'll sit down with my models and paint, and I haven't been doing anything creative like that before. So that was also interesting part of the hobby.
That's really interesting, because I was just going to ask, because obviously your channel is quite stats focused. I mean, I've always wondered, you know, what is your background? I mean, is stats something you sort of learned through 40k, or did you already have that sort of knowledge?
So I'm an engineer. I've always liked math. I work with development, and I've been working for many years. And what I really enjoy sometimes is like, okay, we get a lot of data running tests and so on. And what I really enjoyed was like, how can you, there is a lot of data, but how can I show the data so that people can understand? Because I like that creative part with the data, because data in itself can be really inaccessible to many people. It's like a big spreadsheet and people are like, gone. So how can you pull out the essence there? And then 40k is really, there is a lot of stats, there is a lot of data, but it's also extremely difficult to do a super comparison, right? I mean, factoring in speed, hiding behind terrain. I mean, it's like,
there's so something you can do.
There's so many variables, but at least it was like, and I remember in the first strike, they had this data sheet, right, with the Plague Marines. That it was really neat, because it reminds of the 10th edition now that you get the data sheet. And it was like, okay, the Blight Launcher has this, and the Bolter has that stat. And I'm like, who would ever choose the Bolter, right? I mean, it's like the Blight Launcher is... And then, okay, then you get into, there are points, you can't have that many, you know. In the beginning, it was like, why everybody should use just the Blight Launcher, right? So, and then it was like, okay, how much better is the Blight Launcher? And then I said, okay, maybe I can do some calculations there for the points. Okay. Yeah, that's how I like Excel and the data, and I was like, okay, what is it actually better? And then, because if the Blight Launcher is 10 points more at that point than the Bolter, is it really worth it, or is it better to put another Bolter Marine on the squad?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. A very interesting thing to hear, because I'd always just assumed that you maybe like a mathematician or something, and then I suppose sort of. What kind of way do you like playing Death Guard, I suppose? I mean, are you like a demon engine guy, or do you like infantry, or do you like a bit of a mix, or does it change depending on, you know, where the meta is or what you're kind of feeling at the time?
So that's a bit complicated question, because people assume from my videos that I play or I build my list based on the math I'm doing. And when I play, I'm not like this. When I play a game, I don't want to be in math mode.
Yeah,
I don't know if that makes sense, because when I play a game, it's like I want to take some risk. I'm in the game, I'm a risky guy, right? So if I, you know, okay, I'll charge forward here and shoot, and hopefully I'll survive you shooting back, and then I can do something next turn. And then many times that doesn't work. So I don't calculate in my head when I'm playing, right? But so I like the Plague Marines, and like war games. I think I like I kind of like where you are mixing infantry and vehicles.
Yeah.
The Plague Bear Scroller was really, I mean, the Plague Bear Scrollers are the best model. I mean, the visual, yeah, exactly, with Mortarion there. and this is my daughter's Plague Marine hammer beads she made for me in my the big,
nice.
the big green stuff there. But I think the Plague Burst rollers are. So ideally, I would like to have an army which is like, okay, there is a tank, there is a flyer, there is a monster, there are infantry. That would be a nice way, because it's like for many war games, I think some of the war games where you can, if you only take tanks, for example, that maybe that's something else, right? So a combo would be nice, but yeah. But I also played the Epidemius Demon Engine list. That was really fun to play. That was so funny. That was so fun, and it was like I was playing against, I think, an Imperial Guard player with very small units. So after one turn, you had like a tally of 3, and everything was like rolling it over. It was so fun. It was so fun to play.
That was a fun list. I'll give you that one.
So, what is your favourite model then? I mean, I feel like you might have alluded to it already when you talked about the Plague Burst Crawler, but are they your favourite model?
Yeah.
I mean, just aesthetically, just to look at.
The Plague Burst Crawler is really nice, but maybe the one I have a special connection with is the Taliban. I don't know, it's like with his book and counting, right? The Taliban, it feels like I feel like I think people in the Facebook group have been writing like, you are the Taliban of the group, and I kind of enjoy that because he's standing back and observing a little bit, you know. Like, I think, I really like the Plague Burst rollers are really neat, and I enjoy most painting the Plague Marines. Actually, the Plague Marines really fun. The 7-man kit where you could change
so
them
many
also as you
options
want.
and stuff.
So many, yeah, it's so nice. And painting is always like, oh, there is a fly here, oh, there is a worm here. You know, there is always details you spot. It's really nice.
Nice.
Yeah, I think Death Guard's one of the armies that's it's good. I think it's great for painters of like all skill levels, because like you said, you can pick out every worm, every maggot.
Yeah.
But again, if you're like a new person, you're not really interested in painting, you can do them that quick, dirty, nasty, but it still looks right because it's Death Guard, which is really cool and accessible for all of us.
Exactly. So if you miss a worm, I mean, it's Nurgle. Come on. I mean, doesn't matter, right? But also at the end, I want also to say that at the end of 8th, I think Death Guard was rubbish at that point. It was after the Poxwalker meta. Yeah. And because it was in the starter packs, when I started, it was like, okay, I started, as I said, First Strike, and then a lot of people were selling out. They were buying the starter kits and just selling off Death Guard for nothing. And a lot of people had painted them, and it's like, okay, you get it. So I'm also very happy if I can get models painted. Because for me, it's like many people, most people paint better than me. So the Plague Burst Scroll, I have 3. I've painted 2 of them, and the nice one is the one I bought like secondhand. I can't show you, and I was playing with a guy, and he said, I can see your evolution in painting. You started off here, and then you ended here. And I'm like, yeah, actually, this is the one I bought, and this is my style, you know. So, yeah.
Thanks for the compliment, though.
Thanks for the compliment. Yeah, it's like, yeah, damn.
just saw your Volkite Contemptors there on the shelf below as well, saying rest in peace, Volkite Contemptors. Just spotted them there. Yeah, the Contemptors. I mean, it's like I had my first tournament with them, rolling. I mean, it is rolling the 16 dice and hitting with much more with the Taliban there. I mean, that was so nice for Death Guard, because we don't have so much shooting otherwise. So yeah, and then it's like, no, you can't use them. I think it's all right.
Yeah, that's the saddest thing of this edition.
Exactly.
One thing I want to know then is, obviously, as you said, you started, you got your first strike. How did that sort of then grow eventually into starting a channel? What gave you the idea to even start the channel in the first place? And like sort of grow it and get into the game like at a more, not hardcore level, should we say, but at a deeper level. Because obviously there's a big difference between, hey, I've got my first strike box, to, hey, I'm now a dedicated 40k Death Guard YouTuber.
So I think it's, I don't know, like the lockdown and a perfect storm of stuff, bad stuff coming on, because I've been, at that point, the company I was, all right, so 1 year back from the COVID lockdown, I was at a company, and they were supposed to stop and fire us, everybody. And they asked, do you want to be fired now, or do you want to stay 1 year, head the department, whatever, and then you will get some bonus, and then of course you can find some good work afterwards. And at that point I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, what can happen in the world economy in 1 year? Come on, there is a good situation, right? And then I came out from that work, and then suddenly I was unemployed. And I had planned, because I was okay, I'll have a couple of months free with the kids, family, my wife, and enjoy a little bit life, and then I can find a job afterwards. And then suddenly lockdown happened, and there was no possibility to get any job or anything, right?
Yeah.
So that was like, okay, what am I doing now? And I had a thought from previously, like maybe I should make not for a living, but like try something else while you are in lockdown or between jobs. Like, okay, it could be interesting to explain something on YouTube, or explain math or something. So I was thinking to do a YouTube video, not that necessarily for Warhammer, but I started just with my kids. We were just playing some board games, one of our first video, and then also we previewed this first strike, because I've seen some people playing with their kids, what is in the box and how can you play these missions, and I was like, could you do that? And then I don't know, after summer there, suddenly I was like, okay, maybe I can do the calculations, and then yeah. So the idea of presenting something, making a YouTube channel, and with a growing interest of Warhammer, because I was really hooked into that, combined, and then I found the Facebook group where there was a lot of interaction. It was really nice also in the lockdown that there was kind of a social thing there.
Yeah.
And then it took up from there. And I mean, some of the first videos, you do a video and then like there are 20 people watching, and then it's like, okay, why this guy is doing a YouTube video and it's like have 30,000 views. My video has 100 views. All right, but suddenly it was picking up because people found the channel. It was the Death Guard group. I think was really a good group in Facebook. So a lot of people were interested, and then it was like, okay, and I got a good feedback, and then it was like continuing from there.
Really cool. Yeah, I remember just popping up in my feed one day. Yeah, I don't know how, but how the Facebook algorithms, how they work, or not the Facebook, the YouTube algorithms, I don't know yet. I have to analyze.
Yeah, they're a bit odd from what I've been told, but I mean, you seem to have made it work. So for someone that was just like you said, putting up a couple of videos, and then you sort of like found like your mainstream stride was sort of like the mathhammer sort of like unit comparison videos, which you said is the idea. Go on.
Yeah, people were asking, maybe, I don't remember exactly, but people maybe were asking, it's like, oh, should we use this or that? And I'm like, okay, let's do the calculations. And many times I thought I knew the answer before the video, and then I was making the calculation. I'm like, this is interesting, because some things take you by surprise because you think you know the answer, and it doesn't always be like that.
Yeah, and there's some proper difficult calculations you have to do, because it's not always just a case of which weapon is better. Like you said, it's not just weapons. Sometimes it's like melter guns. Now you've got like an if you're within X range modifier. Now is the melter gun better than the flamer? Stuff like that. So there's so many, like you said, like, and then there's again a game like this. It's not Age of Sigmar. Toughness exists where your strength versus their toughness obviously changes the maths. So it's not as, I imagine, like you said at the start. It's not so hard to get the data. The hard bit, I imagine, for yourself is probably getting the data in a way that Muppets like me and Will can look at and go, yes, we understand.
Yeah, but and the thing is, like, when you start, it's like, okay, I knew Death Guard, and I didn't know any of the other factions. So what are typical targets to simulate, right? So I was asking the group, okay, I thought these 30 targets, I had the General Jannis 31 targets in the beginning. So it's like, at some point, it's like, do I need 31 targets? But if you only take an intercessor, that doesn't give you all the information as well. So it's like, so you need also very deep knowledge of the game to be able to pick the correct things out. And since I don't play as much now, or it's difficult to know what's really hot in the meta for Eldari, for example. Which unit are we typically facing? Which unit are we typically facing? I should be calculating on. So and if you make it very complicated, if you get maybe the overall best picture, but then nobody can follow the results. So that's also a bit tricky how to to make it simple. And my data sheets, if I show you, I mean, it's like a mess now because it's like, as you say, there is range, there is different opponents. If the melta like this, lethal hits in combination with critical hits, I had to redo my whole engine. I made a calculation engine in Excel so I can just somehow plug in the weapons and I have the targets and it's calculating stuff. But then it's all the permutations, all the combinations, and it's like, there are sheets after sheets of data. And then when I do a video, you know, the fun thing is I do a video, I think I've calculated everything. And then one guy asks, but what if I add the Taliban and I use the stratagem? It's like, oh my God, you know, it's like
here we go again.
That's a half a spreadsheet more, right, to answer that question. But if I also take cover, okay, cover, I don't know. It's like it's so much data calculations, and with the contagions of Death Guard now that you have three flavors. Again, I all my calculations I need to do them without the -1 save. And then I have to do them again with a -1 save. So yeah, and then I could add cover, so that gives you already 4 combinations, right? And then you can say no line of sight. So it's like, I mean, it's like don't.
Do you have Mortarion? That is mad. People probably walk in and see like all these maps and think he's planning like a spaceship travel, you know, to the moon or something. It's like, no, he's just trying to figure out if the bolter's better than the blight launcher.
That's the basis of it. And the blight launcher so far has always been better. I'm really sad now in 10th edition the blight launcher is not so good. I have only one plague. Not as good as it used to be. I have only one plague spear marine. It was like when the plague spears came, I was like I was running in all the pits and I found one and I made one plague spear guy. I had 2 melta guys now, but it's like I have like 10 blight launcher guys, but it's like they are okay, but they're not as strong now.
Yeah, I mean, I had to do the same. I was like tried to before my last event. I had to find 5 plague spears and build them up. So I was like, I managed to get it done. But yeah, because I didn't have any as well, which I think is actually probably a good segue because obviously you have played 9th edition. You said tail end of 8th, but
8th,
the majority 9th.
Yeah.
And obviously we're in 10th edition, and obviously, as we said there's a difference between the Blight Launcher in 9th and 10th, just like there is a difference in the entire army between 9th and 10th. So I think it's a good sort of place to go to talk about the differences in Death Guard, maybe your personal preference on the 9th or 10th Death Guard, and sort of like the game in general. Like obviously you've probably played a bit of both now, and where you feel about it and how you feel like the game's going and sort of the direction it's going in.
So what I really liked with Death Guard in the bottom of the 8th and 9th was that we actually had the resilience somehow. We had the 5+ feel no pain roll. That was so epic because sometimes it was like against all odds, you hit 2 6s and then suddenly the Plague Marine is alive. And you know, you could frustrate your opponents, and it was like, especially for me when I was, you know, if you take a risk on the board, I like to take a risk on the board. If you have this 5+ pain, there could be something, right? And then we got the -1 disgusting resilience. And at the beginning, I was not very happy about that. But that worked also versus some armies. And then now in the 10th edition, I was so 9th edition was the main body where I played, and I was quite happy with it. It was ups and downs. Sometimes, you know, we were not at the top. The Admech came out and killed everybody. Then the Tau came out and just destroyed us. And it's like, okay, you know, you could see that. All right, but I'm not like going to grand tournaments every month. So it was okay for the most of the time, I think. Now we lost the resilience somehow. We have gotten some nice things in 10th. You know, like this Biologus bomb with the Plague Marines and the Rhinos, that's kind of neat. But we lost the resilience, and I like the resilience because it was like, okay, we are slow, we can't always hide, we are a bit more exposed, and I like to take a risk, but I have my resilience somehow. And now I don't have my resilience, so it doesn't fit my play style as well, I feel. And 10th it was, sir.
I was gonna say on that topic, like, how do you feel about Will, like comparatively? Because obviously Jannis is right. Like 9th edition was, and 8th edition as well. It definitely was. And one thing I remember saying is when we got the reveal for the -1 damage change from the Feel No Pain, I wasn't too happy at first because, and I said one of my core reasons why is -1 damage always on is nice, but there was something special about spiking a ridiculous amount of feel no pains and watching the soul in your opponent's eyes die. It was funny.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
So, go on, what do you think about the sort of changes between durability to current Death Guard?
I mean, I think Death Guard were possibly at the best right at the end of 8th, but not at the end of 8th with the Codex when the supplement came, the War of the Spider. That was really good, but that was a really weird decision from Games Workshop. I don't know why we got the last supplement then one of the first codexes, because that book was so short-lived. It was pointless, and then
I never got to play a game of it, Will, because of lockdown. I got to play one single game with it. I got to enjoy 4 Feel No Pain Plague Marines rerolling ones for one game, and that was it. And then it got taken away.
And 5 plus Invul. 5 plus Invul, no?
Yes.
There was a 5 plus Invul. That was so nice on the Plague Marines. And movement with Noxious Blightbringer. It was really nice. The cool spider. Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a sweet spot, but again, most of the tail end that was through lockdown. Then when we got the start of the Codex, which was obviously the most powerful bit of when you get your new book, is generally the first few months of it being released, especially in 9th edition. It seems like 10th edition they've maybe sort of torn that down a bit with Dark Angels and Admech being examples. But obviously when we got our book and everyone was, the internet was blowing up about how unkillable Mortarion was. By the time lockdown had finished, there had been other books had been released, and it seemed like we were already beginning to lose our teeth a little bit. When obviously
a single railgun hits Mortarion and kills him, and you're like, okay.
Yeah. When we had the three Contemptors and the 3 Plague Burst Crawlers lists, it became prevalent. That became the obvious strongest list. If you wanted to try and win a GT, that was your best chance. As we saw, it was Greg Chamberlain was one of the people who championed. That was a guy, Rob as well, was the other one who did really well that year. And then Manny obviously did his famous Glasshammer video where everyone sort of thought it was Manny's list, but he'd actually Rob Catton and Greg Chamberlain who pioneered it really. But I think since then, I don't know. I think at the moment we're at a weird sweet spot. I think we're sort of accidentally good in the sense that we just have loads of damage stuff that doesn't really cost a lot in points, but we're not durable at all. Our durability just comes from either having good enough offense that we can sort of hit, and then offense is the best defense, isn't it? If you do such a big hit, there's nothing to hit you back. Then that's a good way to do it, and then. Just we've got loads of stuff, and sometimes you can sort of activation burn. Sometimes people don't have enough activation to get through your units. So I don't know what you guys feel.
I think 10th edition at least. I was looking at the data right now before coming to the channel to see how is the win rates and this. At this moment, it's not so bad as it was sometimes in 9th, where you had this. They seem to be wanting to fix some stuff quickly, and Death Guard seems to be they're balancing people around the 50% win rate. If you want to win a Grand Tournament, there's always something that is better, but it's not as bad as before. But it's like the durability is not there for Death Guard. I think that's the most. I like playing with Plague Marine, so that's okay. But it's the 5 plus Feel No Pain still was the high point. For me. Yeah,
I do hope when we get our book, we do get an attachment that brings back the more resilient playstyle for people that miss that. I've gone on record to say I don't mind the new playstyle as much because I like the new auras. I like playing around it. I think contagions are fun. But there is some times when you do just want to put especially when you have units like Blightlord Terminators who are really struggling to find a place at the moment. I wish, even if just that unit had I Feel No Pain, and its entire purpose was I don't do much damage, but I'm a pain in the ass to remove. Because sometimes you do want a big brick of a unit that's just that thing just exists and is really annoying to kill. And because sometimes I ran 10 Blightlords back in Nephilim in 9th when Armor of Contempt meta was a thing, and having Terminators in cover basically ignoring AP2 was kind of funny. which was, and the weird thing is people will be like, that sounds absolutely broken, and then you need to understand the lethality of 9th. That made you just about survivable. Just about. 9th was wild. But yeah, I think there's been I think that's one of the most contentious points about current Death Guard design is the disconnect of possibly lore and sort of like in-game, like you read in the books, like, you know, Plague Marine shrugging off las cannons. Now obviously you can't shrug off a las cannon in reality because that would be kind of broken on a basic troop, but you know, you would expect them to be, like you said, you know, tougher than just a T5 Marine, really.
And I think there was some of these decisions when they previewed our 10th thing. That's where also I started to wane off the interest. Like it was dropping for me when there was some of our game mechanics doesn't make sense. Like, you know, like we had the plague weapon. I like the plague weapon. All plague weapon rules, rerolling 1 wound. That was a thing. Now we get lethal hits, but we also bring the toughness down. So the lethal hits are a good mechanic, but the -1 toughness doesn't make sense with the lethal hits. So it's a lot like we're taking down toughness, but now we're auto. It's like some stuff are stupid, or like the Lord of Violence, he has a twin-linked flamer.
But rerolls all wounds as his
it's like, but he's already has that. It's like, oh, but I mean, so something seems lazy, and actually, I was a bit. I think also at that period where we got the first rules from the index, that's where also the Facebook group was like kind of a nasty place to be, right? Because people were really upset. Some people were like, "This is great." Other people were like, "This, I'll throw my death card out." It was really a bad period, but I think it was correct that the analysis was correct that it was not good rules, because it's only after the data slate that we are back a little bit, right? We weren't without the -1 save and doing something with his contagions. We weren't really there, right? And then the points were really a huge cut, right? Yeah.
Actually, I remember when that whole thing was kicking off, not only was like the Facebook polarizing, but like when me and Will were recording episodes for this, like we sort of like took on bad cop, good cop. So like, so I was like trying to be like, okay, I'm going to try to look this for positive, and Will was like there to bring me back down to earth sometimes. But it's important. Like, and the thing is, people got so angry at each other. Some people, and there is a thing as toxic positivity, this toxic negativity, but it's always important to hear both sides, because I can't sit here and be like, as much as I can be like, okay, maybe we can make these rules work, I can't sit here and also be like, it's great, guys, because and especially when the game started coming in, the stats started at 34% win rate, was it? Because we had an episode literally called the 34% win rate podcast.
Yeah, it was bad.
And
there was a time in ninth. There was a time in ninth, because I was just thinking, we were talking about the history of Death Guards. I remember that time in ninth when they did that balance patch, and it was the first, I think, the annual one, and everyone was thinking it was just before Armor of Contempt, and it seemed like Death Guard everyone assumed they'd get point drops because that's like kind of the, and then it went up instead, and it was like, I remember that.
They were balancing for a meta 6 months ago with more
I remember that. It was the morning of my birthday, and I got really excited because I was thinking, oh well, I'll be new points, and I'll paint some models, and it'll be a nice day, and I'll write a new list, and it was like the saddest thing ever. It was like, oh my army's been ruined.
Sad when I saw that.
I was playing a 3. We tried a 3-man battle with some friends. It was a bit wonky, but it was just after that data slate. So my blight lords were everything was expensive, and I was so angry at that game. I was like, but of course your Necron thing, it does only cost 20 points, but mine is 50, but it can't walk at all. It's like. It was that was terrible. That slate was the most.
That was my most frustrating moment. And then this Harlequins dropped shortly after that as well. It was like, we've just got to pin points, and Harlequins have come out with the boats with those rules at like 60 points or something. It was like, what is going on? How does this exist in the same world? Yeah, that was. I think that might be up there.
Death Shroud was 60 points a model, wasn't it? Like 180 for free. It was ridiculous.
And the Tau came out shortly after. Wasn't that also when that was horrible for us. The Tau is very difficult. They just with the hammerhead, it's like poking out the Contemptor, and it's like, I point at you, you're dead. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I roll a 2 up, you're dead. Bye. No invul, no save. Get out of here.
And I have a reroll
12 damage.
Exactly. Okay, I'll just take 190 points off the table. Thank you.
That was fun. Yeah. People who've started in 10th won't remember this, but as much as because we do still see people obviously getting upset on meta watch articles and stuff. I just want to remind people there is still balance. A Nightbringer shouldn't be 250 points, but this is far better. And I understand there is upset of codexes coming out at the moment, which are seemingly downgrades, but I would take that over the like Admech Dark Eldar release, which literally ruined the game for like 6 months, because if you weren't playing those factions, you just didn't have a chance.
Every codex ruined the game at that point. It was this is a weird thing. I think people have got a disconnect with 9th edition and how it ended. Like, people keep talking about 9th edition being this absolute amazing edition. It was so balanced. Maybe the last 6 months of it were balanced, but it was, to me, the most unbalanced edition.
Desolators.
Oh yeah, I forgot about them. Yeah,
Desolator meta at the end where you just got indirected off the board by like 20 Desolators.
Yeah.
Oh, cool, that was fun.
But every book just was more powerful than the last one, to the point where it was getting stupid. And then we were noticeably weak, you know, with the Art of War's famous D for Death Guard tier. So it was just getting. I was very. We were kind of making it work, and it was fun. But I think people forget how unbalanced Ninth was throughout the course of the edition. So yeah, I think 10th is more balanced. It seems more balanced. The codexes that come out don't seem to have this huge creep. But I think for us it was more losing the identity of Death Guard, which is hurting the interest. I think right now you can still play. You can Death Guard is quite okay, but it didn't feel right in the beginning with that index. I don't know, something was off. Because they moved us from a durability thing to a debuffing thing.
Yeah,
they make us a debuff. They made us a debuff type of, and it's like, yeah, of course, Nurgle should be maybe plaguing the others, but if you shoot my one lung, I have 3 others. You know, I don't care, right? So yeah.
It's interesting because like in sake of the sake of balance, I do feel like a lot of stuff has become more homogenized and more sort of like similar, and we have like factions have lost a bit of like uniqueness and identity at the moment for the sake of balance, which is a discussion in its own thing. Like, is that a good thing, is that a bad thing? Because like, you can appreciate balance, but there are points where you have certain models and units that don't have a role or don't feel like they should. AK, again, I'll take you back to Blight Lords. And like even certain armies completely at the moment like just feel like they lack complete identities. Like Dark Angels, what do they actually like? What is a Dark Angel army anymore? It used to be like Ravenwing, Deathwing, but now they're all just, because they've like played safe on the rules, they're kind of like all just like meh. And then you just the generic detachments that they can still take. It's not like if you play Dark Angels, you have to take one of theirs. You can take a generic detachment. So in the end, it just feels like you're playing Ultramarines with Azrael, and like that's it. Like that is the extent of stuff. Now, obviously, that doesn't imply necessarily to casual games. I imagine people who play, because obviously that's another topic we can go into, is competitive versus casual. But especially I think for me and Will, who like play obviously at competitive levels and we go to a lot of events, there's definitely I would say you don't see many super fluffy lists, especially at the moment. I feel like it's kind of spam hammer at the moment. It's find the best data sheet, spam it for times 3. Find the next one, like Grey Knights at the moment is Dread Knight spam. Blood Angels is Death Company spam. I feel like Death Guard's in a weird spot where we actually have quite a lot of viable units, so you don't have to do that. But even then, you can see 3 Rhinos, 30 Plague Marines. That is also quite a common build as well.
I in my latest video I was just comparing the 10 winning lists, and there was little variance. But I guess from some other factions it might be less. But I think also it was like the 10th. Some of the things are. It's like, okay, now you remove the psychic phase. All right.
I missed the psychic phase.
My second army was 1,000. My second love in the game after Death Guard was 1,000 Suns, because it was like, oh, there is a psychic ability. And when I was playing them in 9th, of course, your head hurts because you have to balance 20 odd spells. You're right. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, the psychic. Now they have shooting weapons and they still work. But I haven't been really interested to put 1,000 Suns on the table again, right? And then I think it was interesting that they removed the detachments from 9th. That you have the combat, you had to use what it was. I can't even remember now. It was a patrol, or what you do, brigade,
battalion.
You needed the troops and elites and so on. So when you move away from that and give people the freedom, then you would see even more strange lists, right? Because you say, now I'll have only big monsters, or now I take and this is I kind of like this, as I said in the beginning, if you are building a medieval army, you can't only have knights. You should have some archers. You have a catapult. You have a priest. Like mixing. And if you only take catapults, then maybe that's not a typical army, right? So it's a bit like it's easier to make a list, but it also takes away some of that maybe that you are forced to use. Yeah, maybe balance it out a little bit elites, a little bit of that. Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that one, Will, but I agree. It sounds really daft when you say it, but I genuinely think restrictions breeds creativity. It sounds dumb because you think surely having no restrictions would let people do whatever they want, therefore that's more creative. But having you can only bring 3 heavy supports. Now, okay, cool, the free PBCs, which is pretty staple. But now I can't take any predators because I've used all my slots up, and I actually need some anti-tank because, my edge mechanics are kind of meh. So do I take 2 and a Predator Annihilator instead? And these decisions have to be made, and there is pros and cons for every choice. Whereas at the moment, I can just go 3 PBCs, 2 Predators, and just chuck it all in and be like, yeah, get whatever I want, the end. And I kind of, on this note, I kind of also miss OBSEC for the same thing, because I feel like Battle Line, and we're lucky. I feel like we're very lucky with Plague Marines being our Battle Line. Plague Marines are probably one of the best Battle Line in the game. However, in other armies, like Space Marines, technically, you don't really see, you might see 1 unit of intercessors to stand on the home objective and do nothing. But back then, you could have a single intercessor outscore 50 elite units because you had OBSEC, and it made the unit of Battle Line that had a bolt gun, which is never going to do anything. You could GW face, you will never make a bolt gun good. A bolt gun is not good. Straight up, it is never going to be good. But the point is, this dude with a bolt gun could overpower objectively entire elite units, and that was the magic thing. And especially when they give it to our, remember we got our Terminators. That was so funny because it was the same balance patch. They took it off Custodes, and they only got it on their Battle Line rather than all the units. And I just remember the first moment I walked a Blight Lord onto a point which had a unit of Custodes Terminators on it. I was like, that's mine now. He was like, what? He was like, yeah, they're OBSEC. I was like, that's what you've been doing to me for the past 2 years. Suck it. But I feel like it incentivizes people to bring these roles of troops more, whereas at the moment, there isn't even such a thing as fast attack heavy. It's just called other data sheets, isn't it? There's no such thing as fast attack heavy, anything like that anymore. And I kind of like those restrictions because you could bring the skewed attachment, which was 8 heavy support slots, but you had to pay 3 command points for it. So there was hey, you haven't brought a balanced force. That's fine, you're allowed to do that, but you're going to take this bit of a penalty here. And again, the lack of Battle Line means you're going to struggle to play objectives. So sure, you can go with a game plan of I'm going to bring 8 tanks and try and table everyone, but then the guy who's brought 100 Hormagaunts, 1 Hormagaunt towards that objective, it's his because you made the tactical choice to not bring any Battle Line. And I kind of miss that a bit. I think OC is okay. OC's not too bad, but sometimes you can get out OC'd by stuff a bit too easy, certain like Sagittars in Votann, that they have free OC for some reason. They like a Rhinos too. And it's just okay, so I hold that because I've got that on there. And there's other weird things like that. But yeah, I kind of miss those restrictions, those unit roles. I feel like it was more thematic as well. And but editions are editions. I don't know how you feel about that, Will.
I don't know. I agree with everything you guys have said, but when it comes to actually building lists, I actually really like the freedom of just slamming in whatever you want and sort of put whatever you want in, because it does feel fun. The amount of times in previous editions where you had to take your 3 troops, and then maybe you wanted 1 extra HQ, and then you're and you're trying to shoehorn it in, or which one's better. And then other armies just had better units and HQs and troops and others, and Eldar, for example, famously had terrible troops, even though the rest of the army was amazing, so they could just shut their mouths and stop whining. But no, I think the thing that frustrates me with 10th compared to other editions is actually the fixed unit size and the fact that Wargear is free. Because it was good when Wargear was free. I know there was a big question when we first got last time, but now it's anyone who's still got bolters on their Plague Marines should probably just chop them off and put other weapons on, because unless something happens in 11, you're not putting them back on.
They are down there, yeah.
Yeah, it's just not.
and not being able to take 4 Death Shroud, or no, like, and now you have 6 Death Shroud with a character they can't fit the Land Raider. It's like,
yeah, that's the most frustrating.
I leave one at home. Yeah. But and I think that yeah.
Oh, sorry, no,
sorry, the war gear. I think that's no, the war gear is interesting. Yeah, sorry guys. I mean, the war gear is really interesting, but it removes also a bit of thinking in the game. It's like you can also take a Havoc launcher. Of course I will. If it's free, I'll take it. Like I'll put everything on the Land Raider there or whatever. And before you had to think at 10 points for the Blight launcher. Okay, maybe not. But and then it's like, okay, they removed complexity there, but then adding the leaders to the squad, suddenly you get much more complexity in that part. Because the leaders before they had an aura, and now it's like with 1,000 Suns. The first game I played, it was like, oh, this guy gives them +1, and this if I select this unit with this guy, then you move just the complexity to this leader thing. And then my biggest problem with 10th is the terrain. Competitively is the big L's, and you play on a table where you can't see anything. Visually, like a person standing, you paint your models. You have all these playground scrollers, and they spend the whole game behind a cardboard L, right? And then you have your Rhino. You try to disembark all the guys. There are 12 guys now, right? From a Rhino, I have to put a 3-inch, and they are inside a ruin, and somebody's touching the wall. A thing breaks off, from the playground. For me, it's like, I think if I would play a lot, becomes maybe like, I know exactly how to do, but that just the fiddling with the terrains and the ruins I don't like it. And it's like you spend so much on your models, but then you don't even see them. Everything is hidden. I kind of like a little bit less dense. Of course, it shouldn't be like an open killing field. But I don't know how you guys that play competitive, how you feel about that, because at the end it's like the game for me should be like I'm trying to use these units over here, but it seems like now I'm 2 millimeters from this wall, so you cannot touch me. It's like suddenly the game becomes something else. It's like I maneuver a little bit here. I'm keeping hidden all the time. I don't know how you feel about that.
So I imagine me and Will got different answers because we have different play styles. Will is a much more aggressive player than I am. So go for yours first, Will, because obviously you have to play around the terrain more as I play behind the terrain.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one. The thing with terrain, I think, in this edition, I think there's actually two things that I like and don't like. I think the amount of terrain is fine at a tournament, or at least in the UK tournament. I think the number of pieces isn't as much an issue. I think the fact it's all just the same thing is irritating. So it's like, stand on it and it's all just linked to your save. I thought in 9th it was actually quite good that you could sometimes be -1 to hit. Sometimes it was the save. Some units could get it, some units couldn't, which made it feel a bit more real. It's like, for example, now you stand on, say, like what would be a crater, which is that you're just standing there in the open, but somehow that gives you a better save. Whereas before, like, shooting through a forest, it made sense it was -1 to hit because you could be standing behind a tree. Whereas now, you just get +1 to save, whereas you do standing behind a wall. I don't know, it's just a bit sort of, they've simplified it, and I understand why they've done that, because there's a lot of terrain rules in the previous edition that you never saw outside of maybe casual games where you had, like pipes and things on the board. But now, it's a funny one. But just on the points topic as well, with we were saying like the war gear, just before we sort of continue with terrain, the thing I miss the most is also not being able to drop models from squads, like Poxwalkers dropping from 20 to 19 to like fit 5 points in, just to sort of finish off that point there. But also the terrain thing as well, I think I don't know, it's an interesting one. I think it's important that there is a good amount of terrain, but I understand the amount of terrain can sometimes what stops it feeling like a thematic kind of like immersive world and make it feel more like a board game, like it brings it close to Risk and Monopoly and stuff. So I don't know what your guys, opinions are on that.
So for myself on terrain, it's interesting. So I think I'm having a little bit of UKTC burnout. I won't lie. I'd had a little. You can have a little game like at a local shop, and they have like more narrative focused terrain, and it like, okay, it's not the most functional in terms of like gameplay, but the feel of the game is much cooler. Like, stuff looks a lot more thematic rather than just like the big, like you said, cardboard or MDF Ls that we see all the time. And there's a lot of interactions that are sort of like player made in problem but not addressed. Like I know like recently WTC has said like you can't do the 1-inch trick from the wall where you can't get charged for it, but UKTC hasn't done that. So then when you play in those two different formats, like the way you interact with ruins is now completely different, which kind of like changes completely, like on armies being good. Like in one, a melee unit can just charge through the wall regardless. In the other one, that unit is basically unchargeable, which is also incredibly silly. Like I don't get why a guy standing just enough away from a window means the guy that is trying to literally chop his head off with all of his might like a world eater now suddenly goes, oh, I ain't climbing up that window, not enough space for me on that side. Like he just stick his arm through and swing the chainsaw. Do you know what I mean? So there are some moments which I'm just like, this. And those moments feel like this makes it feel gamey, and I've just lost all the thematic because my 10 cultists have stood an inch away from the wall, but not too far enough away from the wall that you can't get in. And it's just kind of like, okay, that's silly. I mean, you have to do it when you're playing competitively because obviously you just put yourself at a disadvantage, but there are those like moments. I do miss stuff like Will said, like with like dense and forests, because it does feel, it does feel right. Like having trees in the way doesn't make my armor better. It means I'm harder to hit because there's stuff in the way. My biggest grief at the moment with terrain is just how stupidly easy it is to get, especially on vehicles. Like I have put the back millimeter of my track behind the building. The rest of me is out in the open. Yeah, I get cover. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, also it's like previously in 9th, some people were like putting people in front of the terrain, but touching a little bit the terrain in front of the terrain. It's like, I have cover now. It's like, I mean, it's or the thing that you say, because it's like, if I play, I would never treat that tank. I wouldn't remember to keep the edge of the backside of the playboard scroll a little bit like this. It's like, that can't give you cover, right? You're exposed, or that and true line of sight. When I heard this word, I couldn't understand what it means, because if it's true line of sight, I can see you behind the ruin, right? That's the true line of sight. I can see you. I can shoot you. No, yeah, I'm behind the thing. And at that point, you put also these plastic markers where it delimits the terrain, but there is actually no ruin, and you are spending with the laser pointers. It's like, I don't know. That's why I felt that the terrain for me is what I don't want to play so much, because it's like, it's so fiddly with all this stuff, and it doesn't feel thematic. That I can see you because you just cut the corner of a plastic something that's not even high. But okay, that's competitively, I understand. That's also how you become probably a good player, benefit in playing really well with what you have, right, in the terrain, and learning that way.
I think it's a good segue though to sort of talk about 10th edition in terms of casual versus competitive, because I feel like, and I think I'm right in saying this, Will, this edition has probably been the most focused on competitive that they've had. Like there's, we have meta watch articles quite often. The rules are clearly set up to be more in like tournament settings, so there's like obscurities, like you said, it doesn't matter the actual building, it's more about like the footprint of the building, and it's all invisible, infinite walls of height that can't be shot through, which I think it has like swings and roundabouts, so it's like it's both good for some and then bad for others. Would you consider yourself more of a casual or a competitive player, Jannis?
I think a more casual player. I have played in a like RTs with the biggest one I played was a five game, but I've tried to play competitive. Like I can see, when you play with the competitive guys, that they are thinking about this millimeters from the wall, and I'm not that kind of guy. So I think it's more. I would like to play competitive game. When I play, I would like to play to win. I don't play just thematically. Yeah. I would like to win, but it's not like I would rather tweak my list to take some units I want to see on the table, rather than, okay, this is the best one, I'll take 3 of those, and so more of a casual player.
Yeah, it's like casual, but you're still trying your best to
I don't, when I come to the table, I'm not. When I play any game, I don't try to lose like on purpose. I want to win, but I will not be doing the gamey things.
Yeah.
Like something like that. Yeah.
So I wanted to throw something in there as well in regards to. I'm not sure I agree that this is the best competitive edition. Now, I'll say just quickly. I think the meta watch and stuff is because they're acknowledging the competitive side of the game. We actually talked about this at the weekend with a couple of friends. I think Games Workshop are almost humouring the competitive side of the game in the sense of it's become big enough, there's a big enough community that they're acknowledging it because it's making them money. But if it went away and people still bought models, they couldn't care less, is my honest opinion. I think it's a game, but in their head it started out as like General Jannis, like it's sort of like I think it started out that way, and it's people taking a game that's not meant to be competitive and making it competitive, and then complaining back at the companies. The companies listening to the player base. So I think the current rule set isn't as competitive as the last rule set. There's less way to exploit it. People are still trying. But the rules, in terms of the rules, go from the understanding of the rules. I think a casual player going to his first tournament, playing a seasoned tournament player, there's actually a lesser gap in skill. In the sense of the last edition, how many times did you go to an earlier tournament, or I can think my earlier games, and someone in the charge phase started moving things extra few inches, and like all of a sudden they'd be halfway across the board, and you'd be like, that doesn't work like that. And then it does work. That's what the rules say. Oh yeah, it does. It's just I didn't think like that because in my head you don't fall back from combat until they're dead because this is a thematic. This is a fight. But I think when you sort of they've took those gamey competitive things, people who exploiting rule wording and trying to minimise that to balance it, but at the same time they're acknowledging the competitive side of the game and trying to push it because I think it's a viable business angle for them. And I think the competitive side of the game has got the point where it also highlights imbalance and broken elements, which is feeding at the casual player base because they're aware of it, and the casual player base like moaning, oh, it's broken and ridiculous, but I play that army, so I'm still going to have to buy that 3 broken unit because I still want to win games. So I think it's a vicious cycle that Games Workshop are in. I think this edition is more competitive because they're acknowledging it, but I think it's less competitive in terms of the rule set. I think they've simplified it in the aim of trying to take some of the competitive gaminess out, but people just find the competitive games in different places. And I think the competitive gaminess comes a lot more at the list building, and people are very much building kind of hard-hitting lists, if that makes sense. And there's, like we talked about before, with the way that the list building works, skew lists are a lot more prevalent. It's a lot more kind of, I'm just going to bring this thing, and can you bring enough of another thing that kills it? And then it's just kind of, backwards and forwards like that. So just thought it was something to sort of throw in there as part of that, because I think it's true, but also not true at the same time that this is the most competitive edition. Yeah.
I think the best games. I think the best game you could have, for me, the best game you could have is a game that I take something out, the others take something of my out. We are fighting over objectives. There is a big fight. I'm losing a lot of stuff. The other is losing a lot of stuff. At the end, somebody wins with a couple of points. That's the best for me, because I don't enjoy a game if I go and just destroy the other one. Yeah, that's not fun. I mean, it's like, or it's like if you play also more casual games, smaller points, and if you bring like Mortarion in a very small game and the other doesn't have anything to deal with him, it's like, it feels like I want to take a 30th blow drone because the 30th blow drone you can take out, right? Yeah. So it's less scary or something. So it's like, and if I get stomped, of course I don't like that, and if I stomp others, I don't like that either. So this is the games where there is some interest, and there is some like clashes, and both can give and take. Yeah.
One thing I'll say, I think that Death Guard is actually good for those games, because the thing is, Death Guard hasn't got like the speed to just. I always find my games, even competitive, even the ones I'm really solidly winning, always go to round 5 and my opponent's still got stuff left and they can still do stuff. Because of the nature of Death Guard being, slow, methodical. I never find myself tabling someone to such a point that they haven't had a fun. Like, don't get me wrong, there's been games where my opponent's really misplayed and that has happened, but it was more because they did something silly that I then punished. Whereas, like, most games always get to, like, turn 5, and it's normally, like, say if I win, it's like it'd be like a 92, like, worst case, like, 78. It's not super, super close, but it's still, like, they've had a game, they haven't been crushed, because, like, we've all had the game, we've gone across, we've got the worst matchup possible, we've gone against the complete counter, and it's ended, like, 100 to, like, 30. Like, I played against Imperial Knights when Towering just came out. He got first turn, and we just looked at each other and we were like, should we play it with bottom floors covered? And I was like, no, technically that's not rules as written, so we'll just see what happens if we play it as they said. I lost half of my army on turn 1, and I was like, oh, that's what happens when you play it rules as written. Yeah. And I think I scored 7 points, and the irony being that the knight player as well had a shit game. He didn't have fun because he was just like, I just shot you to death and there's nothing you could have done. Like, I think that's one of the important things, and I think we do try and put it on our channel a bit. Will we always say, like, find what works for you and play that. Don't just like go and like spam 3 things and try and like, you know, don't. I think Death Guard's a weird one. Like I said, it is naturally, because of its nature as a slow and more honest army. We don't really have gotchas as such. You know, like you're not going to be like, aha, I have now a phantasm 6 inches towards you with Wraith Guard, and if you shoot my Wraith Guard, I now get to shoot Mortarion and one-shot him, and then after that, I'm going to fire and fade back behind the, like, we don't do that. So there's no real like feels bads too much. But yeah, it's interesting. But I agree. I think the best games definitely are the ones where both players get to play the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then feel that they could do something. And for me, it's also, I can also feel that if I'm really ahead, if I'm really in advantage in a game, I tend to play worse after that.
Yeah, so like take the gas off a little bit.
Yeah, like, okay, oh my god, you can see maybe turn 1, turn 2, something is, the Plague Marines are in their face or something, and it's like, okay, the others can't do so much, then I'm like, okay, then I'll maybe don't deep strike here, or, you know, like, I don't know, I tend to play less, but if somebody's like trying to win, I'm really competitive. I'm almost only losing a little bit, then I'm really competitive in trying to get back. But if I'm winning, I don't want to win by too much. So that's
if someone's having like a bad game, like the dice have abandoned them, and like you clearly won, you don't need to go and put your foot on the throat and crush it. like exactly. Like now there is an element in, like, because me and Will played teams formats, that is actually something you do have to do in teams, because it's all about point differential.
Exactly. Yeah.
But again, when you go to a teams event, you know that's the thing. There's a good chance you'll go. I got 20-0. I got wiped out by Josh Roberts on his Necrons. It's like, why is someone the best player in the world? You know,
against me at teams.
but you know when you're going into there, whereas like if you're playing a casual game or, you know, pickup game at the club, like you don't always need to like try and like make the other person's life miserable. like you can have a fun, because it's the thing. And Will, I think you said it last episode. You play 40k with your opponent, not against your opponent. At the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's more fun. Like, I mean, talk about my solo series, the game against Necrons, and it was one of the funnest games I've ever had. Like, I lost by a couple of points, but it was so exciting, and it swings so much backwards and forwards. Like, I should never really been in the game, I don't think, but his dice, you know, went really bad at them, like crucial moments, and let me got into it. That made it exciting, and then, you know, he made clever plays, and it was just sort of really backwards and forwards. And even though in the end I sort of lost, you know, but like I didn't mind because I'd really enjoyed the 3 hours, and you know, and that's because there's also it doesn't happen often, but you know, when you're steamrolling someone and you're on the winning side, and maybe she plays someone's a bit newer, or maybe you know, to first round, it's a bit of a mismatched pair in someone's first tournament. It's not fun to do that. It gets a bit embarrassing, not in the sense of like you're embarrassed for them, but in the sense of like you're already, say, 30 points up in the second to last turn, and you're about to go for this charge, which is 100% the right thing to do, but you're just killing their like last thing, and you just know when that unit dies, they're literally going to have nothing left, and you're like, I don't know, it just feels a bit bad for both of you, if that makes sense. It's not an enjoyable experience. But then at the same time, sometimes No, I was going to say, when you lose big as well, though, it's weird. Like I lost big at the weekend, and it's kind of annoying, but sometimes there's still stuff to be learned from it. But I think at the moment there are some games where maybe that does just happen in 10th. I'll talk about that one on my solo series as a spoiler, people, that I did all right the weekend, but my last game was a complete disaster. But you know, this is the way it goes. But I don't know, like it's still 10th is weird. I think there's a lot of rock paper scissors is my feelings. But I'm with you, Jannis. I think the more fun games are the ones where it's close, and sometimes I'd rather lose 5 close games than steamroll win five games. I think you know, in terms of the amount of time you're going to invest, it's 3 hours a game, which is like, 15 hours of your life. I'd rather spend 15 hours, on the edge of my seat and excited and engaged, rather than sort of like almost bored because it's sort of, after the first 2 turns you're just playing out inevitability, if that makes sense, on either side. But I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
And I just wanted to point out that in the situation where you were describing you're 30 points up and you have your last charge or something, at that point you will do your 10-inch charges, right? The dice are with you at that point. When you don't need it.
Yeah.
When it's like I have to do this charge, I have saved my CP. You can't make the charge. It's like it's always like that. It's like why isn't it? I mean, sometimes I don't know what happens when the dice abandon you. It doesn't matter any math hammer, any strategy. It's like sometimes like already. I mean, from the of the first turns, it's like okay, whatever I do, I will lose now because it's like there is nothing. I had a game last week like that. But it was like I was just hitting 1s and 2s on everything, and it was a mirror match, and he had his flavor scrollers were always shooting with 5s and 6s on the number of shots, and mine were like 1 on 2. It's like all the time. It was like, yeah.
In a way, I don't mind games like because it reminds me. At the end of the day, this is a dice game. So
exactly.
Because you can get super frustrated, but then you have a game like that, and you realize. Yeah, that I just like. There's nothing I could have done. So at the end of the day, it's like, why am I getting upset? There's nothing to be upset about. Like sometimes you get diced. It's what happens. Right. So what we're doing now is because obviously we're getting on a bit. We're gonna move on to the member questions if that's okay for you.
Yep.
So
sure.
We have some questions from our members, so I'm gonna read them out from the podcast. So from our Discord. So here we go. So we've got one here from a fellow called Austin, which says. What has making a positive impact on the Death Guard and Chaos communities done for you personally, General?
So I think it's, I mean, as I said, the Facebook community, I'm not so much into Discord, but I think people have been very friendly and it's like welcoming. And in that period also where it was a lockdown, it was really good to have this sense of friendship with people. And also it's like really good that when you do a lot of work, I'm trying my best to find a good way to present data and then people appreciate that's really a good feeling. So it's really good, this community. And as I said, very, very seldom has it been toxic. The community, and also most of the games when you play Warhammer, I mean in real life, people are very sweet and kind. I mean we are playing in the grimmer dark setting, but I've only had, let's say, maybe one game in those years where I felt I wanted to punch the guy afterwards, right? But most of the people are really good guys. I mean, this is really impressive. It's impressive actually. Yeah.
Even in competitive games, I can count the number of bad opponents I've had on like one hand. It's surprising, and these are people that are obviously wanting to win the game.
Exactly.
Yeah, they'll still
but
like after the game. Yeah, exactly. Like I've had people I've beat people, and then they've been like, "Oh, that sucks. Can I buy you a drink?" And I'm like, "I beat you. No, I buy you the drink." He's mad.
People are lovely. I think that's a misconception with tournaments. I mean, just to run the anecdote from my last week, and like. I won't. The score was bad. Like it was. But the guy was so nice. Like, part of me like wished he was a knobhead. Then I could have been like, it was an awful game and he was a dickhead. But it's like I got absolutely pounded. But he was so lovely about it. He was really nice, and it was like you almost like felt like he was gonna give me a hug, and he was like he was dead lovely, and everything about him was lovely. And I was like, but that's why this game's good. Like social interactions are really what make it. I think people forget how nice it is to sort of sit across from a stranger, instantly have a thing in common that you can sort of start a conversation about, and then sometimes you go away and that might be an interaction with your potential new best mate. Do you know what I mean? It's a nice thing.
Yeah, it's the reason I always prefer playing in person to like tabletop simulator. It's the fact that the opponent is across the table from me, and like you just have a chat, and like especially like if it's a close game, people might be focused a bit more. But my favorite one's when it's like the right. Like I played against Innes Wilson, the guy. It finished in 25 minutes in like a final round game at an event. It was the most chill thing ever. He's just like, I'm just gonna go there, do that. He's like, you gotta do anything? I was like, nah, it's fine. You go do that. He was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna do that. He was like, and then he was like, it was like gonna shoot someone at a tank, and he was like, yeah, you're probably just gonna kill it. It's fun. Like it's like round 5. We're all knackered. He was just like, yeah, it's dead. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like people can be really chill. But yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, we had a game in my first tournament where we were after the 3 hours, and it was like the fourth turn. I was playing Imperial Knights, and we both felt okay. We need to drop lunch because we need to see what happens. And the guy could have stopped and said, "No, we have to stop," and then he would have been winning. But then at the end, Mortarion charged and killed his two big knights, right? But he wanted to see what was going on. And it was really a good game because it was really close. But I mean. Yeah, good thing. And people want to play again, even if it's a bad game. Sometimes people want to play again because then we try something else.
Yeah, and like a great example I had was it was round 4. I was against Genestealer Cults, and we thought I'd won by like 2 points. But then, as we were looking over the board, I spotted that there was a potentially 11-inch charge that would flip an objective, and if he made it, he'd actually win. And in my head, I'm like, if you just shut up and don't mention it. But I couldn't, because I was like, this will make it come down to a single dice roll. I was like, by the way, there is a charge there. And we measured it, and he had to go through Overwatch as well to do it. So he went for it. I spent the CP Overwatch, whiffed all my Overwatch. This was a Flamer Plague Bus Crawler. Killed like 2 of them. He rolled it. He got a double 6, didn't he? I was like,
yeah. That's epic.
Yeah, exactly. And like I've met him at different events now. I met him like London afterwards, and then I met him recently. And like every time I meet him, it's like one of the coolest games I've ever had, and we always chat about it. So like the community can be awesome, and most time it is. And like even me and Willis, like we get people come over to us at events now who've watched our videos and stuff. It is a nice feeling when a guy came over to us and was like, oh, I just played World Eaters, but I watched how you beat World Eaters in your previous event. I played it out the exact same, and he said, and I smashed him. I was like, nice. Which is really cool. So on to the next question. So we had, if money was no object at all, what is your dream list or army that you would instantly pick up for a well-rounded game? So you just won the 40k lottery. You can magically make any army appear, fully painted, beautiful, on your table right now. What are we going for?
Death Guard. I think. I mean, I think I have it here, but if I could get a guy to paint, like I see some of the good guys that are painting. I mean, I would much rather have a nicely painted army than my one. But I don't think it's not. Guard? But it's not like I'm thinking, oh, I can't start Custodes because they are too expensive. It's not a money thing. It's more like, oh, if do I care playing with them? And then it's like, oh, do I want to have all this plastic to paint? Right. So Death Guard for me, it's like maybe I need a few models to complete my collection. Yeah.
What would you go for, Will?
I'd go with Krieg, I think, but all the really expensive board wheel stuff. Yeah, because it would be a lot of money, a lot of money to get like enough to do like max units of anything, you know, like with Death Guard, it'd be thousands, and then also to get someone like Siege Studios or someone to paint it. Like if you could get it all coming back looking amazing, didn't have to build it, could just play with it. I just like the Second World War aesthetic. That's why I like Death Guard. I like the older sculpts where it's like gas masks on guys. I think it looks
the gas mask on the horse, right? Don't they have the gas mask on the horse? That's cool. That's cool. Why do you have horses in 40,000? I mean, it's like all right. Why not? Why not? It's cool. Yeah.
Okay. So next one. What do you think is missing from Death Guard's roster, either lore-wise or from a rounding out the army perspective? So, like, what unit sort of would you like to see added?
Oh, that's a good question. I think
we could do with some new demon engines. But what were you going to say?
Maybe a demon prince that feels more Death Guard-y. A demon prince would be nice. The Plague Bear Scroller is really neat. I think we have, compared to some of the other Chaos armies, they don't have their own vehicles. It's like, oh, there's a Predator or something like that. Yeah. I think we have a lot of models, but not all of them are relevant anymore. Like you said, Blight Lords, nobody feels them. But I don't know. Some better Death Guard princes, I think.
That would like a bit like a hybrid Great Unclean One Demon Prince sort of thing. So that'd be quite cool. I'd be quite happy to see that. Okay, cool. Anything? What did you go for, Will? A new demon engine?
Either a Titanic one, like a Lord of Skulls equivalent for Death Guard, or I was going to say, like, if you wanted to function actually fill a gap in the codec, something like a Forge Feed, something that kind of like shoots a bit like a Predator, like kind of like something, because, for example, say like a Contemptor type profile, but on like a demon engine, so it's actually in our books, we've got something that can kind of do mass kind of line of sight damage. I think they're the things that we could do with just a sort of like round out, or a flyer, you know, like an actual like Storm Raven type player. What about yourself there, Ian? I think, you know, maybe that would be a good one for you to chip in on before you read out the next question.
I mean, I still want a Plague Tower. I still want a lot of a Plague Tower from like old 40k. It's like an old medieval engine with just like spraying heads on it. Just because I just love flamers, like chemical flamers in Death Guard are my favourite thing. So to have 3 massive ones on a giant towering unit, I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Also give it like transport capacity like 40. And let me just chuck full of Plague Marines in it. Nice. That'd be quite funny. Like a 1-drop army, you're like, yep, I'm deployed. That's it.
A drop pod, the drop pod is nice.
Yes, I wouldn't mind.
If they were relevant again, a drop pod, like a Death Guard drop pod. Like I was almost about to order it, and then it was like the stuff was like
gone.
Legend gone, like the Contemptors, right? A drop pod, Death Guard drop pod.
That'd be cool. So, and then last one we got here is, and it's one you've probably already answered, but we'll say it again. Despite all your analysis and all your looking at stats, what is your favorite unit?
Yeah. So Plague Bear Scroller is up there. The Plague Marines and Tallyman, probably. Yeah.
That's cool, man.
And the Blight Launcher Marine. The Blight Launcher Marine, because it was in the first strike box.
yeah. He's I love Blight Launchers. I miss Blight Launchers.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll probably start wrapping up soon because I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yep.
Obviously, time's cracking on. But obviously, do you want to quickly give your channel a shout out and whatnot for people to come and check it out? Maybe something that you're currently working on for them to look forward to, etc.
Yeah. So of course, General Jannis, Death Guard Tactics. Probably will put a link in the description if you don't know the channel. Right now I'm working on the Predator Destructor, so probably that will be the next video. Try to compare the Destructor with the Plague Bear Scroller and the Brigand. Then on from there I'll just take more units. The Hellbrute, a lot of people are asking about the Hellbrute. I haven't used Hellbrute so much because previously they weren't so durable, but they have some interesting weapons, right? You say they have some kind of nice firepower.
Yeah, they can do some interesting things.
Yeah. And then I was thinking maybe to do something like the meta analysis a little bit to see the win rates, and I was trying to see which factions are winning, but it's not always the same. Like the winning percentage and the top placements are not necessarily the same.
Yeah,
some armies have a good win rate, but they don't win the tournaments, right? So that's quite interesting, and yeah.
That's one thing a lot of people look at too much is just the win rate and forget about people who win, because like sometimes you have a faction that's very hard to play and has a low win rate, but the people that have mastered that faction actually perform consistently very well with it. So, definitely go and check out General Jannis Death Guard Tactics. Again, we'll put the link in the description below. Massive thank you, obviously, for coming on and having a chat with us. It was really cool. We'll obviously have you back on again at some point. I asked people for some ideas for you to video, so I will pass them over to you because they have some things they would like analysing. So you have got quite a few ideas to work through.
No, because that's why I asked you also that, because as we discussed in the beginning, I can do the math, but sometimes it's because I don't play as much and don't face all the different combos. It's like you guys have more idea of, okay, this combo is really strong. How can we counter that, or how can we? Yeah, because, if it takes out all our Plague Bear Scrollers, what can we do, or something like that? Then that is, I think it will be a good fit to discuss such things.
Yeah, definitely, because I like it. It's like two different channels with two different like approaches on like the information they give across, which I think goes hand in hand really well. So it's like a natural synergy between us.
Yeah, because I think at some point also maybe when I give you the stats, maybe you can see there is something, and I might not catch the aha thing.
Yeah, like you said, sometimes we're also used to what's being taken. When you actually do the maths, you might be surprised at what actually does the best against said unit, which is always interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So So yeah, Will, anything else for yourself to shout out, mate?
I suppose just that there's another Poxwalk at Plague Me coming within the next week or so, talking about the Blackpool GT that I attended over the weekend. Lovely guys. It was a 3.5, won 3, drew 1, lost 1. The one I lost was horrific in my I don't know if I misplayed it, I don't know if it's just bad, but there's going to be some stuff to unpack on that one, so for the people who are enjoying that, you know, that there's going to be a lot to talk about there. I don't know, I mean, I guess I'll pretend to be Death Guard Dave at this point. So Aidan, if I wanted to get some coaching, where might I go to get some coaching? I don't know, any ideas?
Well, if you are interested in learning a bit more about the game, do check out our affiliate link below to Vanguard Tactics, who are obviously affiliated with us. Lots of lessons on how to learn specific armies, maybe just getting into the game, your beginner course. Loads of great lessons on there. Check out their channel as well. We also thank you to our sponsor, Saltire Games. Again, link in the description below. They have an Etsy channel with a very special branded set of Death Guard gaming aids and utensils for you to use, which are very useful, especially the little deep strike marker. That's probably my favourite one. So you can check them out if you use the link below or use the promo code NERGLE. You'll also get 10% off, and it gives a little kickback towards us on the channel to help us improve what we're working on here. But yeah, in terms of content for our channel, I've got a little fight phase thing coming up. So it's like a mini series focused on the small fight phase interactions that are sort of like can like be maybe a little gamey, but sort of like things that you can use like at tournaments to get those little bits of advantages out of the fight phase. So that's coming up. Also got another. I'm going to finish off the Assembly to Annihilation series. So that's the 4-part series. Well, it will be 4 parts. For people who have just started the game. So we've covered, you know, why play Death Guard, then we covered the combat patrol, then we expanded to 1,000 points in this last episode. We're obviously going to talk about getting you to your first 2,000 point army. So you can look forward to that one. And obviously, we obviously have our podcast, which is every 2 weeks. So this is surprisingly. So you can always look forward to that. Obviously, more guests, or maybe it'll just be myself, Will, and absent Dave, Craftworld Dave, as we've been calling him recently, for your bi-weekly podcast content. But yeah, on that note then, thank you very much for coming on again, Jannis. Go on. Before
we sign off, I just wanted to say, just on that note, also thanks to all the people who watched, responded, and joined in the jokes we had on April Fools with Craft World Dave and everyone changing factions. Thought we'd just throw that in there before we forget, because Aidan did a sterling job. We literally, I put in our chat, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we do an April Fools? And I thought it would just be a still image, a bit of text on YouTube. 10 minutes later, Aidan had that full video up. I don't know how you thought so quickly. The Henry Cavill thing was absolute genius. So yeah. So if you haven't watched it, even though the April Fool's out now, it's still very funny, guys. So yeah, Aidan, you smashed that, mate. You were, who knew was the comedy genius? But sorry, I'll let you get back to sign off. I just wanted to throw that in there.
No worries, thank you. So thank you very much again for coming on, Jannis. And from us here, from Jannis as well. We will catch you all on the next episode. Stay right, everyone, and we'll catch you all later. See you guys.